Hi guys, it's Fentony. Remember a few weeks ago HBO announced that they were developing 4 spin-offs for Game of Thrones? Well, series author George R. R. Martin has given us the first details on these spin-offs. All the shows that are in development will be prequels, so there won't be anything set after Game of Thrones, so you'll not see anything about whoever rules after the White Walkers or anything set hundreds of years down the line. I do like prequels, but the main problem with them is the fact that you kinda know what's going to happen. The world of A Song of Ice and Fire is so big, you can do something separated from the main storyline of Game of Thrones, set hundreds of years in the past, and you won't have a clue what happens. That's if it's an original story. It might just be based on George's works, or something that's been mentioned vaguely in part of his story, and it's been expanded upon. We're calling whatever these are spin-offs, but George doesn't like that term. He prefers successor shows. Spin-off is not the best term, to be honest. It makes it sound like we're getting a spin-off off the main show, for instance with Friends and Joey, something like that. This next bit's gonna please a lot of fans. George is actually working directly with all the writers on all the projects. George wrote 4 of the episodes in Game of Thrones, from season 1 to 4. He wrote season 1 episode 8, The Pointy End, which is one of my favourite episodes. He wrote season 2 episode 9, Blackwater, which is one of the best battles I've ever seen on TV. Season 3 episode 7, The Bear and the Maiden Fair, which is not as good as the others, but it's still a strong episode. An episode that is very heavily focused on Jaime and Brienne. And his final contribution would be season 4 episode 2, The Lion and the Rose. Yep, that's the purple wedding when Joffrey finally bites the dust. Love that episode. George has been working with all the writers and this is good. Sometimes in the later seasons of Game of Thrones, it feels like George could have been needed. You know, sometimes Dan and Dave wrote some bad storylines, but we can't say if George was there, this would have been perfect. We're getting into the big important details now. There was 4 potential different shows in development, and now George has told us there's a 5th. He wouldn't tell us who the writer was, but he speaks highly of him. And George said the writer is a big fan of Ice and Fire. So there's 5 shows in development now, but that doesn't mean we'll get 5. Basically, the pilot scripts are being developed at the moment and HBO's gonna look at them, see what happens, and we don't know how many of the spin-offs will actually be filmed. Some of them might get thrown out and some of them might get the pilot and then thrown out, and some of them might just get into full development. The goal is to have a show just as good as Game of Thrones. This next bit will get some fans really annoyed. There will be no Dunk and Egg. George wants to do a show based on this eventually, but because he's written so little, he doesn't want it to become like Game of Thrones where it goes beyond the books. I do feel that Game of Thrones going beyond the books has made the TV show better in terms of excitement, not knowing what's actually going to happen. George did say that Dunk and Egg would be a TV show eventually, once he's finished, but that could be a long time. And this is a big shock. There will be no Robert's Rebellion. George basically said that once he's finished writing the books, there will be no need to make a Robert's Rebellion because we'll know everything. If you think about it, this is kinda teasing that we'll get even more flashbacks to Robert's Rebellion, such as the tourney at Harrenhal, and more Rhaegar and Lyanna secrets. Could this also mean that we might get them in season 7 and 8? I hope so, as Rhaegar Lyanna's story is so important. But yeah, there's no Robert's Rebellion and there's no Dunk and Egg, and they were the 2 that everyone was so sure on. Wow, this is pretty big news for a Monday morning. I wasn't expecting this. Hopefully we get more details, and George did say HBO would probably announce who the 5th writer is when the deal is done. At the moment there's 4 being confirmed by HBO, and George has said now there's 5. There is a lot of stories you can make out of A Song of Ice and Fire, and this has got me really excited. So with the 2 big obvious shows now being removed from the conversation, what are these 5 spin-offs going to be? Targaryens? Something in Essos? Something to do with the First Men? Beyond the Wall? There's so much potential here. As long as the quality is just as good or even better than Game of Thrones, that's 2 thumbs up for me. So what do you think about this? Are you a bit disappointed that we're not getting Dunk and Egg and Robert's Rebellion? Dunk and Egg would have been great, but Robert's Rebellion, I was never a fan of that really, for the reasons that George stated. I'll leave a link to the Winter is Coming.net page where they go into more details and exact quotes from George, if you want to read that after you're done here. I would appreciate it if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.